Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. Today I have my friend, amazing Janina Neumann, who I'm going to interview for this podcast. Janina is specialized in design, and she's a bilingual design company. And she helps the public sector, charities, social entrepreneurs, and she implements design for social change. Woohoo! And yeah, she's amazing. And the bilingual focus ensures clients can communicate their message equally effectively across different languages and cultures. So, welcome, Janina.
Thank you so much for having me on, Janine. It's so lovely to be here.
I'm so honored to have you on board. I can't remember if I said your company name, Janina Neumann Design. If I didn't, that's a company. Anyway, so I have two questions for you. As you are German and you live in the UK, you started this business called Bicultural. Can you tell me why and when it started?
Yes, so I've been running my business since 2016, and really the bicultural and the bilingual element really came about as I developed as a business owner. Because as you develop as a business owner, you do a lot of self-development, and you just find your authentic self, so to speak. And yeah, it really came about because I was invited by a client to attend their trade show, which is called Medica in Germany. And I really understood that there's a real need to help clients communicate across cultures. So yeah, so bicultural means that you have two cultures that you regard as your own. So cultures can be like people, countries, or the way people behave. The bilingual part is that I speak German and English fluently. I am actually a so-called coordinate bilingual. So I have both language. I learnt both languages in different contexts. So I associate different words according to the language. So it's also guided by experience.
Oh, like an example? Let's see.
There was a really interesting study which I think best describes how I might feel. And it was a study where they asked Mandarin and English speaking individuals. So they're both, the individuals were all bilingual. And they were asked, could you name a statue with a raised arm? And when asked in English, they were more likely to say Statue of Liberty. And when asked in Mandarin, they'd be more likely to say Statue of Mao.
Oh, that's fascinating. I never
Yes.
heard about that. So what's this thing called again? Coordinate.
Coordinate bilingual, yes. There are
Oh,
different types of bilingualism. So you have um, a different kind, which when you're very young, you basically learn these two languages, but you have one way of thinking. Whilst if you're coordinate bilingual, which is the step up from that because you're a bit older, you have two ways of thinking. So I actually can switch perspective according to who I design for. And then you have another level is how people learn different languages when they're adults. So they actually translate through the other language.
oh, that's super fascinating. So if you learn a foreign language as an adult, you first think in your own language and then they translate it.
Yes, typically, yes.
Oh, wow. Yes, that makes sense. Because languages I've learned as an adult, I need to, how will you say this? And I try to remember my textbook as well. How did I say this phrase when I go to the bar and I need to ask for a, for a special dish? That's super interesting. I didn't know they differentiate the categories. Wow, fascinating. Um, what advantages has biculturalism given you?
So the main advantage, I think, is to understand different people and why they might do things differently, and to having more of an acceptance towards that. I also think that I'm more willing to put myself in situations where I don't really know the outcome for example, when I started my business, I was in my early 20s, and I just turn up at these quite random networking events where I knew no one, and I had the confidence because I knew how it sometimes feels to be different. And obviously in that scenario, I was only different because people didn't know me. But being bicultural, you just sometimes don't fit in, even though you have both values and you can integrate quite well. There's certain things that set you apart.
I totally agree. And this is what I feel as we spoke in your podcast, where I will share the link in the description if you want to hear she interview me. But I will just shortly tell you something. I'm Italian/Finnish, but I also lived many years in the UK. I've gone for long holidays in the US because my mother lives there, and I lived a bit in Africa and a bit in France. And wherever I am in these countries, I always feel home, but I always am somewhere else. So when I'm in Italy, compared to my friends, the Italian ones, I always have that a lot of foreigner inside me. When I'm here, I am English, I'm Italian/Finnish. When I'm in Finland, I'm Italian. And it's like, that's something I feel, that you're always like a bit of out of place. But it's actually something, if you make peace with it, you feel good then. It's like you can fit everywhere. On the downside, it's like you have many homes, no?
Yes, certainly. But also, I feel that really the people that you surround yourself with make you feel at home. I have family and friends who are from different cultures, and sometimes it's such a mix. And actually, because of their personalities and their way of doing things, I feel at home. So that's a really good thing. I can imagine, because you're never really out of place as long as you're with the right people.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I heard some time ago somebody saying that if you're with the right people, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And that's true. When you're with the right people, it doesn't matter if you're like playing a board game or just chatting or watching television. If you're with the right people, it's a great night.
Certainly, exactly. And you can just bond over their personalities, because I think sometimes people misunderstand, culture for actually individual traits. It's a good guidance on how to form friendships, but it's not the beginning and end all, because personality is so important as well.
Absolutely. Do you think that your biculturalism has helped you to be more empathetic and be more switch on with your intuition about people?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's because you notice like body language a bit more, because sometimes you don't know how the other person feels, or whether they they might have like a stern demeanor, and you might think, do they not like me? But actually they're probably just thinking. And I have family who are like that, so I can relate to that some people actually just have a you know stare into space when they think. So actually, just being more aware that people are brought up differently, so that's going to affect how they communicate, and it depends of whether they've switched their communication style or not. So yeah, it definitely makes you more empathetic, and it also makes you more empathetic when someone doesn't fit in, because you can relate to that they might miss parts of the other culture, or they've left family behind. So that's why they might be a bit shy.
Yes, yes. And as you, I started to go to network events, and I will immediately see somebody who felt out of place, and I will go and chat with them. Because sometimes it's just a question to warm up to the room, or even to a party. I'm always the person that is, if I see somebody out of place, I try to talk to them. Sometimes they're just having a bad day, or maybe they're just grumpy people. But oftentimes it happens very rarely that they don't want to speak with you. Oftentimes they're like so relieved that somebody's talking to them.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And also, I'm always thankful when someone comes up to me and I feel out of place.
Yes, exactly. Do to others what you wish do to yourself, the golden rule. It's very interesting that so who do you help the most? It's like German people who speak fluently English, or English speaking people that want to do business with German speaking countries. How does it work?
So at the moment, I do a lot in the UK community work, and I have the occasional client abroad who wants to um, export to the UK, and they're based in Germany, or they might have um, a multilingual team. So part of their team was based in Austria, and I communicated with them for a project here in the UK. But also the bilingual and the bicultural aspect actually gives me some insights to help like local communities, because the UK is very much bicultural, and I'm very much interested to work also with minority groups and making them feel like they can build their home here.
Awesome, awesome. Because yes, of course, you also have help British businesses that just want to have a more wide range of people they can appeal to, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, cool, cool. Have you found any cultural barriers, or are there
Um,
any that you're still seeing nowadays?
so for me, I just a personal story. A year or so ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and I felt like I was holding. I told him this story, and then I said, "Look, I feel like I'm holding back towards this client because I just want to tell him how I feel and give him some feedback." And he said, "Oh, this person I was talking to said, oh, how come?" And said, "Well, I'm trying to rein in the German direct feedback." And he said, "Actually, that's what I appreciate most about you, that you tell me in a direct way." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's a good thing." So actually, sometimes we see things as barriers, and we're trying to adapt things that are actually part of our personality. Because I would say that although I'm direct with people that I'm close to, I'm not as direct with people that I'm not close to. So it actually depends on how close you are in a business relationship. So that's definitely made me think about how I adapt, because I've also realized that I am bicultural, so I'm a good mix of both. So I can fit in both cultures, but I definitely would say that what I see with my British clients who want to export to Germany is that sometimes they might get a bit confused about why the German audience might ask so many questions, and also they're very much led by theory rather than by application. So they actually want to understand first how you've constructed your argument. Whilst here, it's a bit more like you show your case study and what you've achieved. So that I think that's quite an important point.
That's interesting. Okay. So Germans are much more, they need to understand how and why you arrive to a result. So they're
Yeah,
interested in different aspects, right? They need to trust you basically in knowing what brought you to that project or to that, I don't know, idea. Instead, British people wants to trust you on a level of, do I like this person kind of thing, right?
yes, and also they the German speaking audience kind of wants to understand whether they agree with your thinking before you come to that conclusion, because if they feel like they don't understand your thinking, that already puts up a barrier,
Oh,
because
okay.
because they're putting their trust in you to deliver or think through a problem. So if they don't understand how you thought it through, they don't really understand how you've come to the conclusion and whether that has any value.
Wow. Wow, that's super fascinating. And have you worked with other cultures that you have noticed some characteristic like the difference between German and British?
Yes, so I've read a few books about how people interacted with different cultures, and I've interviewed people about working with different cultures. I would say a great book to read on those specific things is by Erin Mayer. It's called The Cultural Map, and that's a great book about 8 scales of differences. For example, communication style, how you decide, how you persuade others. It's a really good book.
That's super interesting. I'm going to give it a read. And like, for example, what's an example that was very interesting that you find in the book that you liked very much?
Um, it, there's this one example, and it actually references a different presentation, and it was given by David Foster Wallace, and I can't quite recall each of the individual words to the story, but
Yeah, no, no,
basically,
doesn't matter. Just the idea, the concept that you found fascinating.
yes. So okay, so um, there were there are 2 young fish who swim upstream, and another older fish comes the other way and says, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" And the 2 younger fish look at each other, and one of them goes, what the hell is water? So that just illustrates how we sometimes don't understand how we're living in our own cultural bubble, and how we actually perceive things, generate ideas, is all from our past experiences. So if we have only experiences of our culture, then we're only going to form ideas surrounding that. So it's really important thing, for example, when people talk about innovation, is um, that you need to have a diverse team. And that's because if you have a diverse team, people can behave like they would. They don't try and conform as much to the group consensus. So actually more ideas and more creative ideas are generated.
That's super fascinating. Wow. And I noticed when you were talking about this, I noticed the difference when I was a teenager. I had various group of friends, and there were these big groups I will hang out with. And something very interesting was I grew up mostly in Milan since I was 6 years old, no? So that's why the strong Italian accent. But the thing I noticed was these big groups, and they were the classical Italian. Mostly of them were like grew up in Milan from parents who grew up in Milan, or like always Italianish. So groups with Italian dance. And I noticed these groups were all dressed kind of alike, because when you're a teenager you want to fit in. So one group had all the Fred Perry and I don't know, those kind of brands, like a bit fancy. The other group was all about disco, and they were wearing uh, glasses even in rainy days, like shades, and they had super colorful things. And the other one was more like sportive, the other one was more like hip hop, rap, and then there was one group which was from a part of town which had a very much international people living there, because basically was a small town where there was a television channel. And what happened is that these people were Americans, Africans, Asian, Italians, English, German, from all over the world. And the thing I noticed is this group was much more easier to fit in, because even nowadays, because I'm still friends with this group, even nowadays everybody's dressed alike. Sorry, I meant the opposite. Everybody's dressed totally different. There is the guy which loves heavy metal, so he dressed with black leather and stuff. The guy that dressed like a surfer, and the one who dressed like all elegant, and they all fit in. It's because they never try to fit in and homologate. They fit in, but without homologation. So it's very varied and is multicultural, and it's so interesting to hang out with these friends, even if most of them are Italian, but they had so much influence from you are okay as you are, you don't need to fit into a group. And me feeling always a bit out of place with them, I never feel out of place, no, because when my other friends talk about things, they always talk about things that happen in their area, and they have such a much different life from me, which is fine, but that group is much more close to home, no? And it's the same
So
thing, I think. When you hire a team, if you want diversity, you should hire diversity so they will all think differently. So that's a very good point.
But yes, I find that really interesting how you also said how you fit in better because there's no like group consensus, and but still people get along, and I sometimes feel that they get along better because there's not this one standard how you need to behave or what you need to say.
Exactly, no guidelines. Some people are
Exactly.
full of tattoos, some hate tattoos, but they just hang out together. It's amazing. um, and you said something about before, and the coordinate bilingual. You say that you are a coordinate bilingual, but there are the two types, and you can approach the client with knowing, once you know their own cultural system, you relate to them. How do you spot which type a person is? It's like, do you have a way to ask them like how long I've been bicultural, or is something you can hear from what they say, what they, I don't know.
Yes, and so it doesn't really matter which one you are. It more matters about how you generate ideas. So if someone you know is bilingual from like birth and grows up like that, then all the ideas come into one. So the way they have a one way of thinking, which is their own, which most people have. But with the coordinate bilingual, so if you learn it in different contexts, you can just remember other experiences that you've had in that culture. For example, that statue example that I gave. But if someone's translating it as an adult through another language, then they only have the vocabulary of that one first language to influence what they're thinking in the second language. Because what vocabulary we have and kind of what idioms we use really influences of how we think. So if that person thinks in that first language and it's culturally acceptable to say certain things, then they might try and replicate that in the other language, but it might not be as culturally acceptable, or people don't understand the idiom.
That happens a lot with jokes, when people try to translate some jokes from Italian to English or vice versa, and they just don't work.
Certainly, but also I think that's sometimes what happens in in-house teams when they learn for example English, and they're based in Germany, and they say, well, I can speak English quite well and I can design this marketing campaign, but they've never actually been in the English the British business environment, so they don't actually know how people behave. It's almost creating a concept before you've done your own market research.
I see, I see. That's very clever, but still, you can always deliver amazing results, because I read your feedback on your website and they're all raving fans.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because, and I guess this is because you understand people from different aspects. You are bicultural, and on top of that, you have the curiosity to understand more on how we all work. And you come across as someone very observant, that when you're in a group, you see, okay, this is acceptable, this is not, and you always are very thoughtful, which can help you to understand what a client needs. Once they tell you which clients they want to aim for and who they are, I guess you can do a good balance, right?
Yes, that's right. And also, it's really important to ask lots of questions, because if you don't ask a lot of questions, then you're kind of assuming things that you know from your own experiences, but they might be like just experiences that are right for that situation, but the client might know other things that that work. So it's basically delivering the right marketing message visually, which is really important, but also the right copy about what you want to achieve.
Yes, that's very true. As a therapist, I know for sure, I learned for sure that when somebody tells you something, always ask questions, because we tend to filter with our own experience and knowledge, and the person's like, no, it's nothing like that, because we think I will feel like that if this will have happened to me, but they don't, because they are not you. So everybody has his own filters and experiences, so it's always good to make questions and don't give things for granted, because we are all different, and if you want to deliver a good result that the client is happy, it's very important that you ask a lot of questions and we listen to them.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then I guess sometimes there is a bit of interpretation on intuition on what the client is trying to tell us, because we kind of know, like for example, when I wanted my website, I kind of knew how I wanted to look like, but I didn't had no clue where to put what. So it's like, I don't know, just make it happen. And the person was like, what do you want? Where do you, which, and I was like, I don't know, it just needs to look like this, and I don't know. So it's complicated, because if it's something like, for me, design of a website is out of my depth. Like, I don't know that thing, and I kind of know what the final result, but I really don't know. So I need some guidance to get like, okay, and the right questions, and then I guess I can get, yeah, that's my website. It's even better than I dreamed of. I was like, that would be amazing, no?
Definitely. And also I think it's about trusting the creative to deliver solutions to your problem, and also that you recognize your brand within whatever they've produced. So your brand isn't just like graphics, it's also like the brand values, what you stand for, how you communicate, what you say, what you don't say. So it just goes so much beyond just a logo.
Yes, yes. Do you ever find clients who try to micromanage you? Like, because what I learned for experience is always hire people that are smarter than you to do the things they know how to do. So it's like accountant, hire somebody who knows accountants more than I do, and in the video maker, blah, blah, blah. So always find somebody who knows better than you, no? But I noticed that sometimes some people, with my friends who work into, like in the design industry, for example, you have these clients that try to micromanage. How do you have any tips when you get a client like that?
I would assess their maturity as a business owner, because like you say, I tend to find people who are quite mature as business owners, and it doesn't mean how long you've been in business for. It's about how self-aware they are and how problem aware they are. If they're very problem aware, they understand that actually their thinking hasn't solved their problem. So they understand that actually they need to take a step back and perhaps suggest things. Whilst people who micromanage have probably just heard that they probably need this, and they still believe that their thinking is going to solve their issue.
Ah, yes, makes total sense. So who do you work with the most? Which are your clients you work usually? I know for sure you work with social enterprise, startup, engineering, small, medium business, council, and global think tank. So anyone else? Did I forgot somebody?
Basically, people who want to deliver a social change, and I help them implement that through design. Because if you want to implement social change, you have to have a brand or a message that's really recognizable, so people can relate to it and continue the movement. So that's who I'd love to speak to.
Awesome, awesome. Because as a reminder, you don't only work with German-speaking people, you also work with every kind of culture. It's just anybody who needs your services, and you can figure out what the best project they need, no? Correct?
Definitely. Yeah. So
Awesome.
mainly people come to me when they have a very strong social goal, but they don't know how to deliver it, or they feel stuck. And that's completely normal. Like some people ask me, I don't know what to ask you, but that's kind of my expertise and asking you the right questions. It's more about reaching out and telling me about what you want to achieve. That's important.
Amazing. And how can people reach out for you?
Yes, so I have a website, Janina Neumann Design.co.uk, but that might be a bit hard to spell.
I will
So
put it in the description, don't worry.
no, that's brilliant. Or you can search bilingualdesign.co.uk and you'll also land on my website. And I do a lot of free workshops, and they're all advertised on my website, and there are also lots of tools there and to get you going. And if you want to reach out, then please do. Lots of my contact details are on my website.
Awesome. And what is the things you help with? Because we mentioned at the beginning, but if you want to do a list of the main things you can do for somebody.
Yes, sure. So for those of you who are interested in doing international work, I do bilingual design and typesetting. But I also do a program called Pitch Your Brand, where we develop your pitch presentation, your brand identity, and also your pitch video.
Amazing. That's super. That's super. Janina, was a pleasure to have you today on my podcast.
It was so nice to be on your podcast, Janine, and I learned so much from you as well. It's been really great.
Oh, I always learn from you. It's like, because for people who don't know, but we speak on a weekly basis, and I tell you, this girl is amazing. She's talented, she's smart, she's funny, and it's like, it's a pleasure to, you will love working with her.
Oh, thank you very much. And Janine has got me into podcasting and helping me step out my comfort zone. So she's great in building your confidence.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. And yes, I'm so glad. But I think I was just the final push, because you had this desire to spread your message, your ideas and stuff. So I think I was just the final key. But I just show you where the key was. The key was inside you to unlock that thing. But yes, I'm glad that I was the final step to help you open up and do podcasts, because she's amazing. And tell us about your podcast. Where can people listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so we also had a great interview together. So my podcast is the Bicultural Podcast, and you can also type in the biculturalpodcast.com, and you'll find all the links to that. And you can listen to the other interview we did together, where I interviewed Janine, and it was brilliant. I learned so much again.
Was lovely to have you today. Thank you very so much, and thank you everybody for listening us. And I will put the links in the description so you can find Janina's podcast and her website.
Brilliant. Thank you, Janine.
You're very welcome. Ciao, ciao, ciao.